It's lovely. It's really welcome, everyone. It's really lovely to be here this today. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about yourselves as well, and who you are and why you've come to this class. So if we could start with an introduction, learning circle introduction, that would be fantastic. I'll start by introducing myself, and then I'll invite Manisha to introduce herself, and then we'll go around. So I'm Mary McDonald. I work with Pingwa, and I've been with Pingwa for just over 4 years. I graduated from Teachers College quite a while ago, very long time ago. And then I did my Master's of Education, taught for many years, did my Master's of Educational Technology through UBC, which is a fully online remote program because it's international. Highly recommend it to anyone who's considering such a path. And in that journey, this was before I worked with Pingwa, my arts, which had always been separate, I was from education. I was sort of a writer on the side, but hadn't really dabbled other than the fact that I loved photography, but and loved visual art and just loved exploring art, but hadn't really done a whole lot. And then through the UBC Masters of Educational Technology, suddenly the things I was creating for education and with technology and my arts just went. And as a funny story, I worked with there's one course that you can do yourself, sort of a project for yourself. So I created a course for special education and da 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 da. And I was going to take that forward. That was going to be something I was moving forward with. And I met with Pen Kemp, who's a wonderful poet based in London, Ontario, which is where I was living at the time. And she invited me for tea one day. And I don't know what she put in my tea, but suddenly, nothing, I think. But suddenly, in the midst of our conversation, I started proposing all these wild and wonderful things that I actually had no idea how to do. I didn't even know what I was talking about. I said, "Oh, what if?" And I'm not sure what inspired this excited burst of creativity. I'm still not entirely sure, but I was proposing augmented reality installations and creating these, what did I call them? Because I didn't even know it was a genre at the time. I called them, I don't think I remember, animations or something. I don't know, poetry animations. I didn't even realize there was a whole genre about poetry film. And and so we went forward. She's a fantastic collaborator. She's wonderful because she just says, take it and run and just explore your creativity. That launched my experiences with poetry film. And then as a result of that, actually, I worked with one of my professors at UBC. I wrote to her and I said, well, this course that I created with you, I was going to take it forward for education. And now I'm doing all this art stuff. And interestingly enough, I didn't even realize she was a poet. Natasha Boskic had created a collaborative poem about war with a Syrian poet, Mohammed Kebavar, about their experience of war. She had been in Serbia as a young mom when they were bombing, and he, of course, was in Syria. And so I took their poem and created a poetry film as well as an augmented reality installation. And then we got to take that. Natasha knew all the conferences to apply to, and so we applied to all of them, hoping to get one, and we got all of them. So we got to go on this wonderful, I called it my self-funded resume stuffers, just as I was nearing the completion of my master's. And through that actually is how I became connected with Pingwa. When I came home from my last trip in Europe, we were lucky enough to have a showing in Bath and then in Cork. And I got home and saw the posting for Pingwa, and it perfectly matched how my arts and technology and education had all come together. So that's what brings me here today with you, and I'm excited to hear a little bit about yourselves. So Manisha.
Mary, I'm just here to learn from you. I just find it fascinating. Like, I'm looking for new tools, digital tools to make teaching and learning for students more personalized, more interesting. Um, and um, I think for students to create um,
Mhm.
their own resources, not just for relaxation, but because this can be part of the portfolio. It's digital, it can be part of the portfolio, and it's more interesting Academic education is more print media based, reading based. And I think um, this is multimedia. It can be what the student wants it to be. We just need to learn a little bit more, like your website said, some tech tools. How do we integrate sound, movement? So I welcome you again. A pleasure to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Alicia, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Alyssa.
Alyssa.
I'm currently at the University of Alberta in the archives. And before I did my master's in library information studies, I was in theater and film, more production, like painting, prop building. And then when I kind of had a change of career, I'm still very interested in like creative opportunities and finding new ways of learning. And so I was really interested in this one because I wasn't aware of this genre. And so I'm just really looking forward to exploring different ways of creating and making things. So
Fantastic. Welcome.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Greg.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Greg McKinnon. I manage the Toronto District School Board Museum and Archives collection. And I just saw your notice that this event was going to be happening. I know nothing about it. And I thought, wow, this sounds so interesting and invigorating that I had to sign up for it. So I'm just going to be all ears and eyes today, soaking it all up. So thank you very much for presenting this.
You're welcome. Welcome. I actually started my teaching career in Canada with the board. I taught at Rose Avenue. Fantastic opportunity, fantastic, wonderful students and community. I was there for 2 years.
Oh yeah, a very dynamic neighborhood, and interestingly enough, with the museum and archives, I know quite a bit about that school due to its stained glass. It's
Yeah.
really quite a treasure that the TDSB has. So,
Mhm.
wow, fantastic! Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Edward, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm interested in this on personal level and professional level. I oversee a couple of provincial historic sites, what I call the literary sites. So one of them is Stephenson House, the other is Rutherford House. So both of them were, well, obviously Stephenson was Icelandic poet, and Rutherford was very interested in literature, including poetry. Was good friends with Professor Broadus at the University of Alberta. So I'm always looking for ways that I can maybe animate and interpret the work and interests of the people in these houses. And then also personally as a um, aspiring poet and artist, I'm interested. My own work has always been about bringing words and images together. So this interests me also on a personal level. So I did take in a previous version of this probably a year ago. And since there's new people involved, I thought, okay, let's do a little refresher and just keep the juices going, kind of thing.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you. Riley. I see, I don't have the chat open. Sorry, I'll make the chat up. Okay, Riley says, can't talk out loud right now. Can I read it for you, Riley? Is that okay? My name is Riley and I work at the museum in downtown Kitchener. Senior manager of STEAM programs. Wow, exciting. And manage our makerspace. I have an extensive background in art and technology, and I'm always looking for ways to make new programs for our new makers, kids, and families. Fantastic, welcome. And I'll actually go from there. That's a perfect segue, Riley. Thank you. I'll actually introduce, I didn't really talk much about Pingwa, so I'm going to switch to our organization. Museum list music. Okay, I'll have to look that up. Thank you. Sorry, I'm seeing what Edward wrote to Riley, so that's exciting. So Pingwa, we partner with remote and rural and Indigenous communities across Canada to promote the development of STEAM education through innovative art, technology, and play. And we do a number of things. I started with Pingwa on the travel team, so I was very, very fortunate. I was able to travel to some wonderful communities and meet amazing people and had the incredible fortune to go to some amazing, beautiful places. And then I was a manager of the travel team, and now I keep forgetting my newish title. It's Manager of Community Delivery Partnerships, which we are still exploring what that means. But at the moment, it seems to be looking at how we can best support formal education institutions. So teacher education students, I'm working with NTEP at Arctic College, UBC, their teacher education and their master's programs. So Masters of Educational Technology. So that's a little bit about my workspace. And then Pingwa, as I've said, we partner with remote and rural communities. And so that can mean many things. We've worked with, say, for instance, the SHIELD program, which is the Sexual Health Information Exchange Labrador District through the Friendship Center in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. And they came and did a presentation on harm reduction to these youth. It was sort of a weekend retreat kind of workshop thing. And then we supported the youth to create a video game using either Scratch or Twine on harm reduction. So I love the way technology and arts and STEAM all come together to allow for expression and wellness and storytelling and poetry. And let's dive on into the world of poetry film. So this is a quote from Valerie Leblanc, who is one of the a really wonderful Canadian poetry filmmaker. She partners often with Danielle Dugas. This is a quote from her in the foreword of Sarah Tremlett, who's my friend that I've met through the world of poetry film. It's called The Poetics of Poetry Film. I do have a handout for you, which I'll reference shortly, and all of these links, etc., are on them. So you can take notes if that's what you need to do. I know I think with my pencil in my hand often, but this is all linked as well and provided in the resource handout. So since ancient times, poetry has often married the voice with hypnotic rhythms alongside ritual and recorded life experiences, myths and legends, historical events, social states, and the human condition during times of war and peace. And now audiences are drawn in by technical discoveries facilitating equally hypnotic and immersive effects. What I love about poetry film is that there aren't really clearly defined borders. We can explore with technology in whatever ways we want. It's wide open. And so I find that really exciting, that space and that potential. I've worked with sound, I've worked with augmented reality, and I've worked with just film, and we'll explore some of what that can look like, and we'll explore some techniques and tools. So I thought I would start by showing, sorry, here we go. Okay. I don't think you can see it. My little toolbar from my desktop has gone onto my external monitor, but I don't think it's in your way. I think it's just in my way. Okay. I thought I would show a few films for you to get the idea. Maybe you've already experienced some poetry films, maybe you haven't, but for us to ground our conversation in what on earth is this, let's explore some because they're very, very, very diverse. This is a screenshot from the thumbnail for Selfie with Marilyn, which is a poetry film created by Sarah Tremlett, who's the author of that Poetics of Poetry Film book, a very seminal book about poetry film that I just referenced. And I have it lined up here, and hopefully please do let me know if there's any difficulties with hearing the sound or if if it's not playing well.
Elena, Mary, is there sound in this?
Yes.
I'm not
Okay.
able to hear the sound.
You're not getting the sound? Okay, hold on 1 second, then I'll stop sharing and share again and make sure we get the sound. There wasn't sound at the beginning. So when you first started talking, I thought maybe it's just because of the sound. Okay, so I'm going to share screen. If I choose optimize for video clip, why is that not?
Raleigh is saying that click share audio when you when you're sharing
Yeah.
the sound.
Okay, optimize for video clip doesn't seem to be an option, so I'll just share sound. And we'll try this again. Okay, and I'll just go back to where the sound started. Better.
I would like to say something to this woman I once knew when she was a red-haired girl. I would like to say something to this woman I once knew when she was a red-haired girl. I borrowed this smile for the day. This is what happens when you take. I'm a flash in the pan. Oh shit. I would like to say something to this woman I once knew, like the arrow when she was a red-haired girl. I borrowed this smile for like the arrow car or the hydro bomb. It's a little or gold nail polish torn at the seams. All the glimmers I would like to say something to this woman I once knew when she was a red-haired girl. I borrowed this smile for the day. It's a little worn and torn at the seams. Sometimes I hardly know what to do with myself. But lipstick helps. Paint my mouth like a bed of zinnias, orange, hot pink, fire red, and pretend I'm summer. I'll invite everyone I know over, and we'll jump in the pool and splash around in the blue of my eyes. In a blink, we are all smoking cigarettes behind the vending machine and dropping dimes for soda pops. I have a sinking feeling that this moment is already gone to the place where the extinct animals go to get catalogued. I am a flash in the pan, like an aero car or the hydrogen bomb or gold nail polish. All that glimmers is what keeps me up at night. But last night was a blur. Isn't it always that way when you wake up and look in the mirror at who you were yesterday? Some days it's better to stay in bed and wake up way past when the robins have gone.
That was Selfie with Marilyn, created by Sarah Tremlett, but from the work poet Heidi Seaborn. I know we'll address this question later, but I know one of the questions that someone had asked ahead of time was how do you find collaborators, or how do you deal with copyright issues? And so this particular poem was produced as part of the Visible Poetry Project, where poets apply and poetry filmmakers apply, and then they are matched together, and you get to make a poetry film with that work, and people collaborate in different ways. I think this particular collaboration is set up that the poetry filmmaker has full reign to do what they would wish, but there's ways to do that, but we'll talk about that further on. Another one I want to show you is this beautiful one called Walk Away. And notice as we're watching these, what I want you to think about are the techniques and tools that may have been used to create them, because it's so diverse.
Take me into tomorrow and bury what I leave behind. I have finished. I wish to walk lighter towards where it takes me, with all the love I have known and shared. The sunrises and sunsets all fold together, this life into another. And I thank you for accompanying me in your heart, a most precious gift.
So in this particular instance, Deborah Wilkinson is both the poetry filmmaker and the poet, and that can often exist as well, that you get to be both, which is fun. You get really free, full privilege to do whatever you want to do. We'll also talk about these different compilation websites or magazines or resources, and they're also on the handout that I keep referencing, but I will share with you at the end, and I'll show you before. This is one of those sites. This is Moving Poems, created by Dave Bonta. And, as you know, with most art, there isn't really any money behind it. It's mostly just for love. And so certainly that is the case for poetry film for the most part. It's an in between the lines genre. So Dave Bonta is an incredibly talented filmmaker and poet in his own right. And also he has, out of his own passion, has created this incredible archive and resource about poetry films. So movingpoems.com, I can highly recommend. I'm just going to show a tiny bit of, how long is this one? I think we can actually watch this one. This one is a different approach, and so I think you'll enjoy the contrast.
November. And the Sunday twilight, fallen dark at fall. Its hard, unbroken rain battering the garden. Vacantly, I fill this first weekend alone with anything. the radio. A paperback you never read. In 1845, 200,000 navvies, 3,000 miles of line. Lost faces lift. A mania, a human alligator. Shovels clinking under high midsummer sun. The heat haze dances meadowsweet and May. Whole cliffs collapse. And line by line, I bring your death to lonely, hidden villages. Red-tiled farms, helpless women, and timid men.
As you can see, this one combines a variety of different techniques. We've got some animation, we have lots of glitching, we have a whole variety of sound approaches that have been employed for this poetry film. And the poem was written by Andrew Motion. And the animation was done by Susie Hanna and Haley Winter. Let's see. I want to show a few more and then we'll sort of move into some areas where we talk about collaborating and techniques and tools and open up to any questions that you have, but just a couple more. This is by Valerie Leblanc and Danielle Dugas, the two Canadians that I referenced at the beginning with the quote. And this is a work of theirs that they actually do manage to live through poetry, film, and art, which is stupendous. This isn't the compilation. They had a different one called Flow, where they got to go to the Everglades and work on a climate sort of impact series. But this is a different one that I brought up. This is a trilogy of video poems. The Dream series was realized part of an artist residency at the historic Deering Estate in Miami, USA. And we'll just play the first one of the Dream series.
September 20th, 1925. My dear brother, I write to tell you of a very curious dream that I had last night. I found myself wandering through my home at Cutler and in the gardens of your own Vizcaya. And yet, even in that dream state, I floated, feeling that I was not really there. Everything had a familiar quality, but you were not at your house. And it was as if I was no longer there at my own stone house either. It was as if I was in some future time when all of our deeds would be in the past, and the faces of strangers would fill our homes. This morning, I awoke to find everything to be as familiar as when I went to sleep last night. But this dream was so vivid that I have to share it with you. I have heard that the weather on the Atlantic Passage is rough at present, and that the seas are high. I hope that this note finds you well and enjoying your voyage. I will write again soon. Your greatest admirer, Charles.
So as you can see, as you're beginning to see, there's such a wide variety of different approaches. Let's see how we're doing time-wise. Okay, this one's pretty short, so I think we'll watch this one and then we'll talk a little bit more about different techniques and collaborations. I hope you're enjoying this. I could sit and watch poetry film all day, so this is lovely. It was a nice treat this week.
The cherry tree. When the cold, colorless months of winter stretched endlessly, I waited for the flowering of the cherry tree like a child counting the days to a birthday. Growing older, the months speeded up, the blossom opening in March scorched by frost or quickly blown from the branches to lie rain-sodden on the lawn. If the tree hadn't towered so huge and unwieldy, I'd have erected a tent to hold back the buds. But, while I shrank, it rose even higher. I was sure the tree would outlive me, sap rising up the trunk long after I was ash. But now, strangled by ivy, it's weakening too. Only this moment is certain, both of us here and alive. A cherry tree flowering, a woman gazing at branches clotted with pink blossom and searching for words.
I hadn't actually realized as I was collecting different poetry films while around how often Susie Hanna was actually involved in these. That was completely serendipitous, which is funny. So if we just think again about what you're beginning to see that poetry film can involve through all the different techniques, the part that is common is that there's a choreography, what I like to think of as a choreography between text, image, sound, and movement. And that's kind of the key in the core. It's not, I was talking to someone the other night and they said, what is poetry film? And they said, you just put a poem to film. And I said, no, it's not a direct translation of that poem. It's an interpretation such that with the ideal that you create something new between all of these pieces that come together. And some of them you can see that the weight is a little bit more vested in one aspect or another, and others it's sort of an equal flow or a flow back and forth. And again, the exciting thing is that there's so much opportunity to do whatever you want to do with poetry film. So we'll kind of pull back and look at sort of some logistics and techniques and some resources, and then we'll dive into a little bit more about collaborations, and I'll share with you some of the things that I have done in my poetry films. So here's the resource that I've been referencing, and I will provide it for you at the end. So it's a very long, it's a long compilation handout because it's kind of grown over the years. So we have here the link for the poetry film book that I've referenced, the Poetics of Poetry Film, if you're sort of interested in the the genre in terms of an artistic and intellectual and academic sort of way, then this is a fantastic resource. And it was written by Sarah Tremlett, and here's her website referenced, and I have it open. We'll probably visit it as we go along the links. A short history of poetry film is linked here. You can find a history in both Sarah's book as well as a little video and a written article about it in Poetry Film Live. I think that our bandwidth is good enough if I flip between tabs, but please let me know if I'm talking about something that doesn't seem to match. I'm doing a lot of work virtually through Nunavut right now, and often if I switch tabs, they're stuck 3 tabs behind. So I've become more cautious about this, but I think it's okay here, but let me know if it's not. So Poetry Film Live, that's where I had the cherry tree up. And here you can see, actually, we're going to come back to this because this is about making poetry films, but there's also, I went away from the actual link, but anyway, on this Poetry Film Live, I guess I could just do it through the, thing here. Let's just open it there. Okay. She has a whole article. This is, elephantsfootprint.com is is their website, and she has, like I said, she's created this little video about the history of poetry film, as well as a whole article here if you're interested in sort of the roots of poetry film and how it came through experimental film and through just artistic explorations. And we have, as I've suggested, the compilation websites. We have Liberated Words, which is a combination or a collaboration work between Sarah Tremlett, whom I've already referenced, and Lucy English, who is a poet. And I met through my initial sort of explorations going with my poetry film with Natasha. We were actually able to present at MIX, the Experiential Storytelling Conference, I think that must have been 2018 now, but I got to meet both Lucy and Sarah there and started a long friendship now with them. Moving Poems is the website that I've shown you already, Dave Bonta's work, and Poetry Film Live, which I've just shown you where the history is, plus some wonderful, the Walking Away poetry film was one of the ones that they've selected as sort of their featured poetry films, and they have a lot of information, including the making of poetry film, on their site. And then there's another group called Motion Poems, which is based in the US, and it's a little bit different because they combine, at least they were, last time I interviewed them and talked with them, they were taking from the public domain and or getting copyright, a group like a publisher getting permission to use those poems for a specific purpose for a period of time. And then they actually have Hollywood people creating these poetry films. So they look very different, as I'm sure you can imagine, but that's that website there. And then there's a little bit about my work. I also am very interested in sound as an exploration for arts. I think there's a lot of untapped potential between geofence sound and place locative sound, place-based sound. Of course, we have Janet Cardiff, who's done so many amazing Canadian artists. This is a free app, Echoes, where you can actually make geolocated sounds and sound walks, which is exciting. I used it for my sound work, which I did and this is all available on my website, which I've linked here, but it's not poetry per se, but it's taking the letters from World War I around London, Ontario, where I was living, and I composed a 360 soundscape with fragments recorded of those letters, so that it's a whole 360 binaural experience, so that your voice, you might be hearing voices right in your left ear and maybe right directly in front of your forehead or behind you, looming above or behind. It's all mapped out. That was the way I edited and composed the sound work. And then Duncan Speakman, if you're not aware of Duncan Speakman's work, it's absolutely phenomenal. Again, not poetry, but just sort of explorations of combining arts and technology and purpose. And Duncan Speakman's, a lot of his work is about impacts of climate change. There's a ton of poetry film festivals, which we'll discuss in terms of what's available out there. And so you can see on the resource, there's a ton listed, and there's also more on Motion Poems, Dave Bonta's site. And then what I wanted to talk about in a little bit is also some tools that you can get to for creating with, and they're all linked. So we'll circle around to all of these things. Let's take a look at some collaborations first. So poetry film festivals are a wonderful place if you're looking for collaborations. Just going to these festivals, a lot of them have virtual aspects now as of COVID. They used to be kind of in-person events only, and now they've really branched out to sort of be hybrid events. Great place to find out more about poetry film, and also to potentially connect with practitioners and people who might be interested in collaborating. So Real Poetry is one of them, and I've made this, did a screenshot here of it, but this is on Motion Poems. You can see he's compiled sort of the latest calls for entries. And here's the Real Public Poetry site itself. And one of the interesting things, Real Poetry Film Festival in Houston actually began in, I think, 2018. And that was, I got to go, my work was accepted. And at the time they were providing accommodations, I think. So all we had to pay for was our food when we were there and our flight. So that was one of my self-funded resume stuffers, and makes my explorations dive into this world. What they've done really interesting is that they've actually provided opportunities to connect filmmakers and poets, and making collaborations between them, or offering the opportunity. There was also, I forget which year it was, maybe 2020, where there was the opportunity for poets to write a poem and choose sort of a provided video background and sounds. And then she had some volunteers, including me, who would put those together for them. So basically creating a sort of poetry film, a sort of introduction to poetry film, to see their work translated into a poetry film. Ish. Not really a full poetry film, because it didn't get the full artistic treatment, but somewhat. And that was an interesting opportunity. So I suggest, if you're looking for more and looking for collaborators or people you could potentially connect with about poetry film festivals are a great way to do it. You could also explore connecting with local poetry groups and seeing people might not even be aware about poetry film. You can introduce them to the idea and see if anybody's interested. And there's also, of course, public domain work, Creative Commons work that you could use if you are looking from either side for either text and or images and sound. So we'll talk a little bit more about creating and techniques, but I just wanted to make sure that you saw the full list of poetry film festivals available. Yeah, I was thinking I had another link open for that, but no. Okay, so before we dive into sort of techniques and tools, do we have any questions so far?
Oh, hi. It's Greg here.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead, Edward. Go ahead.
I have no questions, but I'm just blown away by this whole genre. It's incredible. I could watch them all afternoon, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Interestingly, last night, my son, who's at Humber College, needed to interpret a song into a short film. And he's in stand-up comedy and comedy writing there. And and here is a crossover. We listened to a Sonic Youth song, and then he encapsulated little parts where he would then do a video of. And I so wish that I had seen this yesterday, so that I could have justified what he was doing, because although it's different, it's exactly that. It was interpreting the words of the poet and putting it into a video form. So when he gets home tonight, we're going to have a great talk, and I'm going to share some of this stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for opening my eyes to this.
You're welcome. That's great. I'm glad you've discovered something that you're enjoying well. And Edward had asked, is there anyone working with concrete poetry films? So like more the words. I don't have it up as an example, but yes, absolutely. And I'm trying to remember his name. There's one, I think he's German, and he's well known for his work. And he creates, it's concrete poetry. And he's actually, I think he codes it. I don't think it's just, trying to think, I'm pretty sure there's an element of coding that he's created them through coding, that he has it going across the screen, and then videos that I'll have to try to remember his name. If I don't remember it now, I'll look it up after and share it with Manisha, and she can share it with you. But yeah, that can be really interesting. So as you saw from the list, and you'll see when you get the handout, there are a ton of poetry film festivals out there. A lot of them are free to submit to, but some of them you have to pay a little bit. So, you know, that can add up, unfortunately. A lot of them come through Film Freeway. If you're not, and I do have that linked on the handout, but it's Film Freeway is where sort of indie films and shorts and stuff can submit their work. And if you search poetry film festivals as well, some work through Film Freeway as sort of a one-stop shopping where you can store your work and submit your work, which can be kind of handy. Okay. So we're going to move to a little bit of media explorations, and talking about the potential for all sorts of technology, and also touching a little bit on things that I've done for techniques and tools that I can share with you. So I have that open right here. I don't think I want to show that yet. First, I want to show this. Okay, so hopefully you can see an image with a sort of a circle of trees and birds coming out in a QR code. Hopefully that's what you're seeing. So this is the work I did with Pen Kemp. When that drink of tea, that cup of tea, and I didn't even know that this whole genre existed, and I proposed all of this. In fact, I went through this entire collaboration not even knowing that poetry film was a genre. I can't remember what I called them, but anyway, I had a showing at Museum London as part of WordFest, through Pen's work, and we did all of this work, and then I discovered this is an actual thing that other people are doing, which was really exciting. The fun part about that is that I didn't have any expectations or feel like I had to cross any thresholds. So that was kind of a nice way to enter. This particular work is a digital artwork that I created through App Smashing, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then you can see it's a simple augmented reality installation. There's a little QR code, which when you scan it, obviously will lead you to the poetry film for Wishing Well. And we had these printed on aluminum prints. You can, through Poster Jack, actually, you can get prints posted on aluminum with the idea that it could be outside. And so we conceived of sort of a circle of words or a circle of poems along the river, because it was part of a collaboration supported by the London Arts Council, the community investment sort of arts funding. And we presented it at Words Fest, but we had 4, I think, of these aluminum printed digital artworks that connected through the QR code to the poetry film, which included then sound, music, visual, obviously. And that could then be, interestingly enough, when you think about place-based, you could be along the river, because the idea of the project was to celebrate the beauty of the natural environments in our local environment. You could take these and set this up as a poetry walk or a circle of words and sound, and bring that, through technology, bring that art, sound, music, visuals into a natural space. You can also, obviously, as we know, we've seen it before done much more sophisticatedly than this, in like historic spaces, of course, as well. So just wanted to share that. And then a few of the others. So that was for Wishing Well. This is the work I created for Silicon Valley. And this is the work I created for Believe. Now, this is my very first entry into poetry film. So I will say that I look at Believe in Silicon Valley now, and I can see potential, but I can also see some places I could have improved because I was just learning. So if you do happen to go backwards in time and watch my earlier work, please please be patient and understand that they were growing opportunities. But wishing well, I'm still quite proud of, and I will show you that in a moment when we talk about techniques. So I've mentioned app smashing and different tools that you can use. Just before we dive into that exploration, whoops, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to play this little video. There isn't any sound. This is just a snippet of one of the things I was editing to create one of my poetry films. And I pulled it out as an example of something I call progressive edits. So it's originally a photograph, and then I progressively edited the same photograph with different fun, kitschy apps and put them together. And it's interesting what happens. Oops, let us. So I hope you could see that subtle shifting of light and color. What I did was just put it progressively through the same photograph, obviously, so there's no change in perspective. It just seamlessly flows through. And I just put it through a bunch of those apps that, you know, you can create art, quote unquote, with your photograph and then put them together. And I liked, as I was exploring with it and playing with it, I thought, oh, I like this effect that it just kind of seamlessly flows and changes, and you can change the light and the mood and everything just through that little progressive edits. So it's a technique I've used a lot. And I used it a lot in Wishing Well. So I think I'll show that one first, and then we can talk about some other techniques and tools that are available, and I'll show Utility Pole, which is one of my more recent. So this is my website. That's Utility Pole that we'll come to. I wanted to. A bunch of my work is here, but we're going to go and see Wishing Well. And before I do that, I just want to point out that you probably know this already, but there's this little gear wheel on YouTube and sometimes in Vimeo. You definitely want to change the quality. I can't seem to trigger it to show it a higher quality. And it won't do justice if you leave it at 360. So please put it at 1080 if you can, and then you can play it.
Wishing well. I'm a river widened by misery, and the potency of my language is more than human. Therese Melot, Heartberries. Something about truth, about not needing belief or creed to open up to all that is out there. Blue sky is enough to take me, a river, the thought so wide, it expands its own boundaries, beyond, beyond, so utterly beyond. Aspiration in action, to become that whole, that full, is all I desire. À mon seul désir. The thing about women from the river is that our currents are endless. We sometimes outrun ourselves. Therese Melot, Heartberries.
So that's a meditation. For me, the interpretation of her poem, and Penn was fantastic to collaborate with because she just said, have fun, run with it. And so to me, that poem spoke about the millions of tiny moments of beauty that we are surrounded with every day, that if we could really pay attention and notice them, we would be so much richer. So it was a bit of a meditation on that. This was, again, one of my earlier films, but the reason I'm showing you this and talking about the techniques is because if I could do it, anybody can do it. It was all free tools and very simple tools and very accessible tools. So the music is completely composed and created by me on my iPad. I think it was actually Believe at one point, in GarageBand, you can play the instruments. And so at one point I'm creating a layer, like oh, for heaven's sakes, the word for it. I'll stick with layer. But one of the layers in the mix of music I was making, I'm actually playing the cello with my finger on the iPad to go with this, the music track that I was creating. That's the word, to go with the track that I was creating. The music for this was primarily actually created with a, what is it called? Tibetan singing bowls. It's an app, a meditation app, but you can actually with singing bowls that you can play on your phone or iPad, and you can make recordings through it. So I actually recorded that as a track and then edited into the film. The layers, I'm just going to make this full screen just so you can see for a moment. The layers of film, as I'm sure you can imagine, is this three-minute thing, but it took so long to make, but it was so much fun, so wonderful to explore and create with it. But all of the images, the still images in the background, have gone through that app smashing that I talked about, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. Essentially, in a nutshell, it means going through a whole bunch of apps. You take a photograph and you put it through this app and that app and that app and that app and just really rework and change it. That's app smashing. And then I put them together in a background sort of layer. The water is actually a footage that I took. I had a rocking chair on my balcony and I took a walk and I did I think it was slow motion or else just film. All this filming is done with my iPhone. And at the time it was just the original SE, so not even a fancy iPhone. I don't think did I have a tripod? I think I had a tripod at that point. And I set the rocking chair to rocking to get the movement of the water, and then drop things in it and stuff, and did a whole bunch. And then I took that entire track and chopped it up in a free video editing app, which I'll share with you in a moment, but actually chopped up those bits so that the drops of water into the pool matched what was happening with the images, the little small, I call them moments of beauty, drops of beauty. And so each of those little drops of beauty are photographs or strings of photographs that have been progressively edited, and are actually tiny little videos. That the great thing about using mobile tools is that you're just using your hands and your fingers. And so on the iPad, I'm just shrinking that by hand. That animation is all done by hand. And there's a little way of making I'm forgetting my words, I'm sorry, keyframe animation, but just shrinking. You don't need to know anything sophisticated approaches or anything. You can just play and explore these things. And so they're all hand animated to look like they're falling into the well of water. So it's many, 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 many layers of different layers of footage of film and of sound often. But again, all using free, very accessible tools. And I think I'll show you some of the tools that I used for Utility Pole, which is a collaboration I did actually got a commission through Fiona Tinway Lamb, who is the most current anyway, or most recent. I'm not sure who it is currently right now, but last year, the Vancouver Poet Laureate Fiona Tinway Lamb had seen Wishing Well and liked what I had done with it, and so then asked to collaborate with me on her poem, Utility Pole. And it was a very different collaboration. In this case, she really wanted to have a good share, a hand in creating the film. So I would create something and send it back to her, and we'd go back and forth with how it turned out. So I'm just going to show you a few of those, what happened with that collaboration, a few of the techniques I used, and then we'll dive into a little bit further into potential tools. So when Fiona invited me to create a poetry film for her with her poem Utility Pole, I always look for the key message and also the key visual. Message isn't the right word, but aesthetic, I think, is the right word I'm looking for. So for me, in this case, she had a line of the poem called Teeming Green right at the beginning. And so I wanted to create this lush, moving cornucopia of life, a living green network. And the rest of the poem is about, utility poles and how they are mechanical world of utility poles fraught with the vicarious life of our human communication networks. And the irony that these poles were once trees, living trees with their own networks and supporting their own form of life, and now they're sequestered and taken into put into service for human communication networks. And when we first talked in our first collaborative meeting, she had also mentioned that she had, I think it was a painting she had that was sort of like a finger painting almost, and that was sort of her visual of this teeming green. And so we explored that together through words and sort of a spreadsheet kind of approach of what she's thinking, what I was thinking. And this is kind of begins to explore some of the process that I used, as well as trying to take this feeling, this visual key to me, and turning it into, how do you turn that into the film? So underneath, on the left, you can see the real photograph of a cedar branch. And then I put it through various different apps, including one is called Tangled Effects. These are all just like kitschy free apps that people do things with, but I look at them and go, ooh, what could I do with them for art? And play with them. So you can see kind of layered on top of each other on the right, two different kind of edits of the same photo. And then I put it through some more apps after that. It actually was a still photo, but it was a live photo. I don't know if you know live photos, what they can do, but if you have an iPhone, unfortunately Android, you can't do quite the same thing, or at least not that I know of, unless they've changed it recently. But iPhotos, one of the things you can turn it into is a long exposure if you have a live photo. So I had this cedar branch and it was moving, so I turned it first into a live photo. I also did some work through the apps called Tangled Effects. And then I used this Pixaloop, I think is what it's called, where you actually paint movement with your finger on the iPad or phone onto a still image. And so I took this very reworked image of the cedar and then painted movement. And so it does look very glitchy, but that was part of the aesthetic, the point of it. Okay, so I'll show that one, and then we'll actually I think there's two more pictures here. So one of the key central images as well, I was very lucky. I happened to be going to Vancouver at that time anyway. Fiona's based in Vancouver. And so I was able to go to the Green Heart Tree Walk near UBC and do a whole bunch of film footage. And I was also lucky enough to go with Natasha. Actually, we were showing her work in Victoria. So we went to Cathedral Grove on Vancouver Island, and it was just absolutely stunning. And I took the photograph on the right as the actual photo, and there was something about the light emerging behind the tree trunk that really called to me. And then I, again, put it through some funky, fun, kitschy apps and came up with the image on the left, which is one of the central images through the poetry film. And just before we continue, this is in Liberated Words. Sarah did a little article about the poetry film utility pole and the processes I used. And so this is actually sort of a step-by-step example of some of it using a borage flower on a nasturtium leaf. I just took the photograph. I was playing one day as I was picking food for my dinner from my garden. And then I came in and of course, instead of making dinner, I started playing with my photographs. So I put it through this app called Tangled. And then Tangled Effects. And then I tried a different preset within Tangled, kind of pushed the envelope a little bit further and a little bit further. And then I put it through again and really pushed the boundaries to this Tangled effect to get this webbed thick preset. It's play, it's fun play. Okay, so let's watch that one. I think the setting on this one is okay at 1080p already. Okay. Before we play this one as well, just to note, if you watch it yourself, it's best with headphones. I did actually create a binaural immersive soundscape for this one. It's not very loud until you get to the credits, so it's not really obvious. But I know I was showing it to my daughter, and I said, "Well, that's the recording of the sound." She said, "No, it's not. That's outside." And I said, "No." I stopped it. I'm like, "This is the sound," and she hadn't understood that because it sounded so immersive and place-based that it actually was for the film. But it's best with headphones. You won't get that effect today.
Once a teeming green cosmos, 130 million of you. Southern yellow pine, Pacific silver fir, lodgepole pine, jack pine, western red cedar, Douglas fir. Forest plunder dismembered into bald gray spines soaked with creosote. Studding highways, roadsides, alleys. Column after rootless column aligned in a motionless mule train crisscrossing the continent along infinite grids. Telegraph, telephone, smart meter backhaul, video service, internet, cable TV, transformers, fiber optics, equipment enclosures, disconnect switches, electric meters, streetlights. While you root the human, current, pulse, signal, now sing in your cross arms. Only woodpeckers remember, drill you back into tree.
I don't know if you could hear there, but you could hear the sounds of planes and blue jays, but you could also hear yeah, the planes, a bit of like airplanes, a little bit of wind sound. And so it also is a discourse, an investigation of the sounds that we hear in our urban forests now, that we can't escape the sounds of all the other things that we have made for our human connections. And so that was part of it as well. It's a real choreography for me, and I think for all of the folks that we have seen today, between image, sound, text, and movement. It's a choreography amongst those elements to create something new. So when we look at this is some of the questions there I had put for myself to remind myself what people wanted to talk about. When we look at sort of some tools, so inspiration was just, it was a lot of fun to explore, and I haven't actually created anything in quite some time, but someday I'm hoping to get back to it. The accessibility is what excites me, because it's open to very sophisticated tools and sophisticated people with a lot of experience and tools, etc. But it's also open to people who are just playing with free tools and mobile tools and very easily accessible tools. And so I think that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about it. It opens the doors for anyone really to play with technology and arts and find the wonder at that intersection. So when you're thinking about teaching and learning, if any of you are in the position where you might be thinking about working with students with this, it's a very accessible genre in terms of exploring. To get material, like I said, there are, if we pop over again to the handout that I will give you, there's so many places where you can get free and Creative Commons, free to use, and or Creative Commons licensed material. So the freesound.org, in the utility poll, I had the Morse code showing at one point. I got that from freesound.org. Fantastic sounds that you can get there. Just put up by people, again, love and sharing of passions. And then of course there's a Creative Commons site. And then there used to be, oh, I meant to take this off. There used to be a YouTube free music library, but I was quickly trying to go through. This is a very old compilation of a number of different handouts that I've created over the years. And I was checking the links, and this one didn't seem to be valid anymore. So I will remove that link. But there used to be, maybe I'll leave it for now and I'll test it in a minute. But there used to be a free music library through YouTube as well. Images, there's so many different places that you can get images from, but also, honestly, smartphones are so fantastic that a lot of people can create their own images if they want to use images in creating video, which you can do. You can combine them and create video with them. I know Janet Lees, for a while, I think she's changed her approach, but for a little while she was doing sort of the Twitter effect, visual effect of Twitter, and putting in, I forget how many images per minute, but she had like just of all these still images all put together to create her poetry film. But there's a lot of free sites here listed. Video as well. If you, again, smartphones are so fantastic now, and they even have built-in stabilization so well that you really can take your own video and it can look good. But should the need be, there are also lots of free sites where you can get free video. If you do want to create your own, content, like I said, smartphones on their own are quite amazing. There's also, I was hoping I could dig it out in time, but I didn't get enough time. But there's such a thing as a gimbal, which I do have linked right here at DJI Osmo. So I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like gimbals for a real, a fancy video camera that a movie shooter would use, a professional shooter of movies, filmer. But you can get ones for your smartphone as well, the DJI Osmo, that are not that expensive, and they really open up the opportunity for different kinds of shots. And if we have time at the end, we're winding up, so I probably won't have time. But if you end up exploring any of my website, the film I created with poetry film I created with Natasha Boskic and Mohammed Kebedvar's work on the margin of history actually uses 360 footage. That was, or that's one of the layers anyway, that was edited as flat footage, which means you have all sorts of different angles available to you. But similarly then with the Osmo, you can do sort of panning and dolly shots and all those fancy shots that you can see in videos in real movies. You can do it with a gimbal. There's some free video editing apps. Now, this is how long it's been since I've looked. I have a new phone. I opened up Videoleap and it's a brand new thing now. Who knew? Videoleap, I used to recommend. It seems to still be free according to the FAQs. I have a paid subscription, so it was hard for me to dig under and see, but they're asking you to subscribe, but I think you can still use some elements of it free. Certainly can do a free trial, but I think according to their FAQs, you can continue to just use the free tools. And it's, I used to recommend it. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the beginning here. I used to recommend it because it did the most things in a very accessible way, and it was completely free, and it was available on both Android and iOS. So I still recommend it. I think it's it looks like you can do way more now with it than you could when I was working with it. But the fun with working with a mobile editor, and I would suggest if you're new to this, that you would recommend that people try a mobile video editor first. And it doesn't really matter which one, but you want lots of scope for possibilities. So you could do keyframe animation, as I said, with Videoleap. You could put on text, you could put on effects, you could have layers. And so there was a lot of scope for possibility. I know, like in the Dream one that we saw there with Valerie LeBlanc, there's definitely videos that have been composited on top of each other, layered on top of each other. There's a lot of different approaches you can take with that, and as well as my weird, weirdly smashed layers as well. And the cool thing is that you're doing it all with just your fingers, so you don't need to know what keyframe animation is or how to do it. You just explore and play, and you can all of the things, the editing, everything you can do just by exploring and playing with your fingers, which really, I think, opens up the possibilities and removes a lot of the barriers of content creation. If you're working with a something like iMovie's not so bad, but if you're working with not Filmic Pro, Apple one, I'm forgetting the name, it's all linked. Logic is the, anyway, I'm forgetting the name, the Apple one. You need to kind of know some of those things. You need to use numbers instead of just changing things with your fingers and things. And so there's a whole different depth of knowledge that you need to bring to the experience. Whereas when you're using mobile tools, you're really truly just playing. So Videoleap is definitely worth checking out. Again, this is all on the handout. Then I found this article when I realized that Videoleap might actually now be a paid thing, which I was most sad about. There's this article here that I've linked with a bunch of alternatives to Videoleap. My favorite story about Videoleap was when I was originally creating with Videoleap, I was at Staples and I was buying, I think, a USB stick, and I was just chattering away about the things that I'm doing. And I said I was working with Videoleap, and the guy behind the counter said, yeah, really, really glumly. He said, yeah, I spent a few $1,000s in a couple of years at college to learn what my girlfriend can do in 2 weeks on Videoleap. So it was such a great story. So again, these are all linked, lots of different tools. You can also, and then there are some laptop version ones of video editing programs that you can try. Recording, I can hear it now and wishing, well, I didn't have the equipment or the knowledge that I have now. And so there's some parts of the recording of Penn's voice that I wish I could redo, but I can't. I'm past that. But anyway, here are some very accessible tools that are actually mobile-based microphones. You can have little mini microphones that go with your mobile phone. Sound has to definitely be a professional quality. You can get away with lots of things and bad visuals, etc., but bad sound is not something you can get away with. So if you can't record good sound, I suggest just put in some music. So if you don't have a microphone or whatever, take that sound out. Make sure that in your video editor, you have a way to remove the sound. In Video Leap, you just select it and you can separate the audio that came with that. If it was a video, sorry, a still image obviously wouldn't have it, but live photos do if you're turning those into videos. So you have to be careful. So you want to select the video clip and then separate the sound and then trash that sound. And interestingly enough, like slow motion and stuff will come with sound and it's horrible. So you do want to get rid of that. And then you can replace it with something else. So, and you can also put, as you saw in some of the films, you saw the words on the screen. So instead of narrating them, sometimes it's even just the text words can be on the screen. Again, if you're having difficulty with recording. And then my favorite thing to create with lately actually is visuals, but actually primarily sound. I'm really interested in sound exploration. So here's a little bit about some tools to create with sound. Audacity is free, or was it last time I checked? Reaper, last time I checked, was $60 for a 10-year license, and it's much more sophisticated what you can do with Reaper than with Audacity, so it's worth looking at. And then Logic is the one that I used with Apple that allows you to create in 360, to edit in 360, which is pretty cool because you don't have to record in 360, but you can actually edit it and compose it into that way. And then you can create that soundtrack. And if you want to, you can attach that to a video, or you can, or maybe you're just creating with sound and it's a whole different thing. And then here's a long list. I haven't finished checking all these links, but I will share it with you. And then my apologies if there are any links that are no longer working. A lot of them were. I got through almost all of them, but the ones I can most highly recommend. So if you're looking at still images, that's what these, primarily what these apps are for. Some of them will also work with video. Snapseed is my highest recommendation for photo editing. It's mobile based, so again, you don't need to have that knowledge of the numbers and the understanding of the science and etc. You get to just play with your fingers, and it's fantastic what you can do for free. It's definitely free, and it's yeah, the possibilities within Snapseed are endless. And I think, I'm not sure if I created, I don't see the link here, but there's a wonderful tutorial to use Snapseed. Usually, most of these apps have tutorials right within them, but also iPhonephotography.com is a fantastic site for resources for that. And a lot of these are just kind of kitschy little apps, but you never know what you can do with them. Another one I highly recommend is Touch Retouch. If you have something that needs to be taken out of a photo, a lot of photo editors will allow you to do that. Even mobile ones will have a tool for that. But if it's a big thing that you need to do, I suggest Touch Retouch. It's better. And then you could always bring that same photo back into whatever other editor you're working with. And then in terms of photography gear, the reason I love mobile, hopefully that made that bigger for you, not just for me, but I have a little photo at the end of the handout of all my mobile gear. I love mobile gear because A, it's portable, and B, it's accessible, and most importantly, it is affordable because it's, for a lens, you can, well, lenses now for phones are harder because the phones have changed, but you can get a tripod for a phone for, a small amount of money versus one thing for a real camera. Big camera, as I call them, can cost, your entire mobile gear altogether for one item for a real camera. So you can explore some things. So I'll stop sharing, and I do want to make time for questions, and I realize we're almost out of time. So just any questions?